Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Derp Your Hooves. So today I thought we'd fly around and land on Mount Fuji to bring in the new year. And today we're going to be using the H-145 helicopter from the High Performance Group. Now this is a payware helicopter, and I've had it in my hangar pretty much since it was released. And they released the H-135, freeware helicopter first, and you can still get that for free on flightsim.to. But however, after I flew that helicopter and I was aware that the H-145 was available, I liked their work so much that I decided to go ahead and just buy the H-145 and see what the differences were. And I have to tell you, I really was not disappointed at all. The H-145 helicopter was introduced prior to Microsoft Flight Simulator's Update 11, which we know as the 40th Anniversary Edition update. So this is pre-Bell 407 and the gumball, whatever that other helicopter is. And it was actually one of the first helicopters to not use third-party software like Airland FS that some of the other third-party helicopters use to fly. And somehow the High Performance Group figured out how to get this thing to work on their own and include software in the package to help it fly. Now, I'm going to say that it's a great helicopter. The 135 is also a great helicopter, and it's great for beginners because it automatically has things like yaw dampener and all this stuff turned on, which makes the flight model easier. And if you want to get more advanced, you can turn that off, especially in the H-145 edition. So, in comparison to the Bell 407, this helicopter is, in my opinion, a little easier to fly. I'm not sure how realistic or unrealistic it is, because again, only a real-life helicopter pilot who's flown these helicopters could say, hey, the flight model's realistic, or it's not. Because us simmers, unless you've actually flown the real thing, all you can do is compare it to other sims and previous versions of the sim and use that as your point of reference. So the H-145 has three variations. It has the civilian variation, the luxury variation, and the military variation. And today we are in the civilian variation, which really doesn't have a whole lot of bells and whistles. It comes with some outside features like wire strike protection for looks and stuff like that. But that's pretty much it. And you can, add or remove passengers as you see fit to have them in the back. But I think all variations have the passenger variation. The luxury has the same one, but the luxury includes deployable emergency water floats that can be set to automatic or that you can do manually. And it has a different cabin configuration in the back, the passenger compartment. All three of them do. And the military version has guns and rockets, and it has, little armed soldiers in the back. So you can have that, and again, you can fire the guns and rockets on the military version, and you can see the smoke and the explosions and the fire and all that stuff. But I really doubt that it interacts with other players in the sim. You just get to see it on your end. Because Asobo did not want this to be a combat flight simulator. They wanted it to be just a standard civilian flight simulator. So, again, you're not going to shoot at anybody out of the sky with the military version. But, it is kind of fun if you just want to fly around and see that kind of stuff. So today I mentioned that we are landing on Mount Fuji, not just flying around it. And Mount Fuji has an elevation of 12,389 feet. Now, I believe that's above sea level. So we need a helicopter that can give us that and give us a nice rate of climb and has the power to get there. However, you actually have to go out of your way if you start at the base to kind of circle back around to get to the top, just as you would in any other smaller aircraft that may have a lower thrust to weight power ratio. So, stuff like Cessna 172, some of the aircrafts that may have like a ceiling of 15,000 feet. Now, you will be able to fly over it in those, but again, you're going to have to get a running start at it because depending on how much weight you have, it affects what your rate of climb is and your speed, or you'll stall the aircraft out. And so the Bell 407 was giving me some issues trying to get to the top. And, to be honest with you, I know that the H-145 will always reach the top because I've done it in this aircraft prior. So that's what we're using today. And again, that's why we're kind of taking the long way around and making a big arc to get up on it. Because if I try and approach it, because it's a giant mountain, from the bottom and just go straight up, it's going to take a long time, and it's really not the proper way to do it. You want to give yourself the distance necessary to get from the base to the peak and just above the peak so that you can drop down and land. So, let's talk a little bit about Mount Fuji. So, Mount Fuji is where we're going to be landing today, and then we're going to actually take off and from the peak and go land at the base again. But Mount Fuji is actually an active volcano, and it hasn't erupted since 1707. And when it did, it spewed some ash and stuff into some of the neighboring cities, and it formed that new crater on its peak on the southeast side, which you see right in front of us. So it actually has 3 volcanoes in one, which you may not know, and it's a triple junction of tectonic activity where 3 different plates meet together. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, that could be why, Japan and Tokyo have so many earthquakes. Now, the thing is here, Fuji is also kind of sacred to some of the Japanese. It's a symbol of Japan. It's been featured in poetry, literature, and prints. I mean, it's probably one of the most recognizable mountains in the world. So Mount Fuji is it's also a sacred site for followers of the Shinto religion since the 7th century, and they consider the peak to be sacred to the goddess Senjin Sama, and you have to forgive me if I don't pronounce it correctly. And there are shrines at the base and the ascent. And this is actually one of Japan's 3 holy mountains. So it was first climbed around 663 AD, where a monk climbed it, and his name's unknown. And it says this was about the 7th century. And it was only climbed pretty much by men. And the first person to reach the summit that we know of was Sir Rutherford Alcock, who was the first Westerner, and he climbed it in 1860. So women were not allowed to climb the mountain until 1868, and the first woman who was able to climb the mountain and reach the peak was Lady Fanny Parks in 1869. So it was forbidden for women, again, to climb the mountain until the Meiji Restoration in 1868. And this probably has to do with the Shinto religion. Again, I'm not an expert on the Shinto religion. So don't quote me on that. This is pretty much just what I've researched. So again, now everyone can climb to the top. And there are 4 trails to the top of Mount Fuji. And it says it takes about 6 hours, roughly, for people to reach the summit of the mountain. And there's 4 different trails, again, that you can take to get there. There's 10 rest stations that await on each route. And they offer food and drink and rest spots. So it says if you're a novice climber, you should take the Yoshidaguchi trail to the top of the mountain. Now again, Mount Fuji being very popular, it's also one of the most climbed mountains in the world. So it's visited by about 300,000 climbers every year. And that's actually a pretty impressive number. And apparently it can only be climbed for about 2 months of the year. That's kind of impressive. Now, there's also 5 lakes in the surrounding area of Mount Fuji, and you can see one of them off to the right as we were approaching it. So Mount Fuji actually has a whole lot of history, and a lot of people may say, well, Mount Everest is. Well, Mount Everest is definitely higher, as far as I know, and definitely more popular, around the world that we know of, if you want to talk about names of mountains. But that's just some of the fun facts about where we're going today, just to give you a little bit of education on this. Here we are at the top of Mount Fuji by the crater, and you may notice that the sim has put some buildings in. Now, there was a post office at the top of Mount Fuji. I'm not so sure if it's still there. The last article I read was in like 2020, and I think they were getting rid of it. So I'm sure the sim has left it in, but there is a shrine at the top of Mount Fuji. So there's a shrine up here that was built to placate Mount Fuji's wrath, or to, stop Mount Fuji from exploding. And it's kind of an interesting little place. We're not going to really be able to see it too well. So it's the Okamaya Shrine right here that you're going to see. That's the name of it. And unfortunately, again, as we come in, you're not going to see the actual representation of it. You're going to see the sim representation of it. And we're just going to try and get in here on the H-145. So again, like I said, the H-145 is a little different than the Bell 407. So we're not really going to have some of the same issues with landing because they both fly differently. And I have pretty much turned off the major yaw dampeners on the H-145 as we come in. So, wish us the best of luck of landing here. And let's see how well we do. Well, it may not have been perfect, and it looked like we were actually going to tip over there for a minute, but hey, typical derpy landing, and we did land on the top of Mount Fuji, so we got some business to do here, and then we can get underway. So again, I had mentioned that you can put passengers in the aircraft, and that's the one thing that we've done is we've picked up some passengers here on top of Mount Fuji, and as they've paid for this charter flight, we have to take them to their destination. So let's get underway and get them to where they need to go. Apparently they could climb to the top, and I guess their digital legs are just tired, so let's fly them on down. So this video has been edited for time. We did circle more of Mount Fuji before landing, but it was actually quite a lot of footage, so I just decided to edit some of it out, and we're just going to go ahead and land here at our destination and drop off our passengers. So I wanted to thank all of you for liking and subscribing and sharing my videos here at Derp Your Hooves. And recently we have just hit 308 subscribers, and I can't think of a better way to ring in the new year than going over 300 subscribers. So thank you guys so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing to Derp Your Hooves. And I wanted to say, as always, Thank you for watching Derp Your Hooves, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the skies.